Okay. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. Happy Wednesday afternoon, or as happy as we can be under the circumstances. It's kind of a crazy time in San Francisco. We are currently sheltering in place, and we're also away from the office as there is some credible intelligence and information in Noe Valley that protest scheduled this afternoon at 4 o'clock, arranged by Mission High School from over in their campus at, was it 15th and Mission or so, 16th and Mission. They are going to be marching to the police station at 17th and Valencia, but there are supposed to be splinter groups going to wreak havoc in Noe Valley Commercial District. So we've boarded up our office, and as you can see, John has gone home to Under the Sea there. So he's got a good background. It looks like he's Finding Nemo.
Yeah, Finding Nemo.
Well, I just watched that movie for the 9,345th time. But I am also, we're just dealing with the heat and dealing with the changing conditions in the real estate market. The rental market has been very, very poor. There really isn't anybody interested in renting apartments right now, because if you can avoid looking for an apartment, you are avoiding looking for an apartment. And most people who would ordinarily be able to look for an apartment are not doing that because they don't have jobs that are starting now, and they're not relocating to San Francisco for things like school. And a lot of people are leaving. And so we're stuck in a situation with a lot of tenants sheltering in place. And, I have talked with my team at the office about how important our work really is in helping to enable our tenants to shelter in place. And we're doing everything we can to keep their homes safe and secure and comfortable, or as comfortable as we possibly can, to take care of their needs while they're in this difficult time. And, now we're protecting ourselves as well. With regard to the rental market, we're doing everything we can. There was an article that came out earlier this week about how the rents are starting to drop, and it was a pretty steep 10% drop in San Francisco and 15 or so percent in the South Bay. And that's not something that we see very often, where the rents just go off a cliff. Usually it's a developing situation. And so, right now we're hoping that we get interest from qualified tenants and we can work out good deals with them. We're also trying our best to hang on with our existing tenants. We certainly don't want our existing tenants walking away right now. I would hope that existing tenants would give us a chance to talk to them and make some sort of a deal. We're trying our best to hang on and get new leases to get people through another year in exchange for a free month's rent, to try to get as much of this lockdown as possible, so that the units that have been rented in the last couple of years don't go vacant, and we end up with a whole bunch of vacancies at the same time. And so, we're hoping that we can get through this, but I'm not optimistic about the chances for renting a lot of units between now and the end of the year, because I don't see a lot changing between now and the end of the year. I don't see us being any closer to a vaccine or any sort of a treatment or a change in, it's not going to be a big change in the shelter in place. And I actually think we're possibly heading for, if these protests around here turn out to be really big, I think they're highly likely to be super spreader events that are going to set us back in terms of infections if we're not lucky. And so, this is all very frightening and unpleasant and difficult. And I'm just hoping that all of our tenants understand that we're doing our best to try to take care of them, and we want them to stay, and we value their tenancy, and we'll do what we can to try to explain that and make it clear to them. So, that's where we're at right now. Legally, there's not a whole lot new. The Preston legislation that would invalidate, or that would make it so that anybody who had a past due balance on their ledger from deferred rent due to COVID-19 job-related losses, things like that, would not be able to be evicted ever, even after this is all over and people are back to work. That legislation was actually unable to be heard as it was scheduled on Monday. And so we're not going to be waiting. I think it's until next week for that legislation to be heard. But I know a lot of people wrote emails and were preparing to speak at the meeting. And I appreciate all of you for your commitment to that cause and for your time and energy in doing so. So I just hope that everybody knows that we still have a fight on our hands there. The courts won't be open for a while, so there really isn't a whole lot going on in that regard. And then, when it comes to commercial tenants, you're doing the best we can. It feels like right now the best approach for a lot of tenants who are unable to be open at all is, if you have a lease that is up in somewhere, less than 3 to 5 years, somewhere in that range, that you can, not collect rent now and defer months later and add it on to the end of the lease. So far it seems that many people's attitude and their appetite for deferring rent beyond 5 years is sort of limited. And we're trying to work with tenants who have longer leases to make some sort of a deal to get something now. I've had some conversations with commercial tenants who've told me that they have the paycheck protection loans. They need to get some rent off the books in a quick manner, and we're doing the best we can. Really, it looks like the fairest way to do this is a 50-50 split, where for every month you pay, you get a month free to try to keep it going through to the end of the year, and then we'll reevaluate in the fourth quarter and see what happens. So for commercial rents, we're just doing the best we can to keep everybody moving in the right direction. And, I'm trying to keep the backlog of new arrangements in check so that I can start documenting these agreements with the commercial tenants and the restructuring of their leases with formal lease agreements that will spell this out and make it clear for everybody. But it's a challenging time, and it's like having your hand in a vice right now. You just feel it slowly turning and getting tighter and tighter, and it hurts more and more and more, and it isn't going to get any better. And all of a sudden we have a vice going in the other direction with the civil unrest. And the other part of it, I contacted my insurance broker, Pete Johnson with New Front Insurance, and he's just gotten finished spending 3.5 months or so telling his clients, no, you don't have any business interruption insurance for coronavirus because it's a pandemic and it's specifically excluded from your business policy. And now he has to tell all the business owners who have businesses that have been vandalized in these sorts of protests and looting and riots. And actually, it's the looting and the riots, not the protests. The protests seem to be peaceful, and there are people who are using the protests as cover for looting and riots. But we have all the looting and riots. That's not covered either. That's civil unrest and riot, and that's also specifically excluded. So everybody's getting hit with a double whammy. So that's why I boarded up my office and sent the staff home and told them work from home for the rest of the day. But the real important thing is for everybody to stay safe, and that's where we're at. So I'll certainly open it up. If anybody wants to press the button and ask a question, raise a hand or send a question in chat. I'm happy to talk. Otherwise, I will also be happy to introduce Josh Silverman to talk a little bit about sales market and what he's seeing in terms of the sale volume and activity there. So why don't I bring John in here, or Josh? I'm going to unmute you and put you on the spotlight. Go ahead, Josh.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sales market in the midst of a pandemic and now global civil unrest. Not good at all. The clients I'm talking to that are interested in selling are not price sensitive. So they are willing to meet the market, and they understand the circumstances. That is not your average seller. And so I am seeing I'm seeing a definite pullback again, beyond those folks who are going to just kind of wait it out. I personally lost a tenant yesterday who moved it back in with their families. It was a 3-bedroom unit. So there's some problems there as well. I'm growingly more pessimistic about the rental market, and you know, I'm worried about when that $600 bonus goes away from the feds on unemployment, how that affects the ability for people to pay rent and stay where they are. So I'm nervous about that. But anyway, back to sales. Not a whole lot new to report. It will be, you know, we're taking another huge hit as a country here in terms of what all of this does to the market. And it's sad. It's sad, you know, on a personal level, and the people that are suffering and hurting. That's just more on, you know, emotionally, it's been a difficult weekend and week. But we're now in the midst of a second big kind of punch here. And so, yeah, and I'm, you know, cases rising, COVID cases rising. So anyway, I'm trying to just kind of wrap my head around where this is all going to go from a sales perspective. And, you know, there is some activity. I'm working with a team of investors who are taking advantage of a deal that fell out of contract because that buyer lost 20% of their renters and the income from that, and so it felt like they had to pull out of a deal. So there's some, you know, there's some opportunities there for buyers for sure, but more people than not I'm talking to are just, from an investor standpoint, have just taken a real punch and are certainly on the sidelines right now. But they still have a lot of cash on hand, and so you will see some activity. It's just going to be reduced.
Yeah, it's tough times out there. You know, I'm having very much the same conversations about rent. I'm talking to clients who are, you know, rushing to rent vacant units. I just talked to a client with an outside listing today, building we don't manage, and she called me and said, you know, I'm okay. Let's just reduce the rent by 20%. I just paid the building off this month. I made my last mortgage payment. I burned the mortgage, and I'm ready. Let's just rent it. And I reminded her politely that we just rented the unit downstairs, directly downstairs, in the same configuration, one floor below, same quality unit for basically the same price, and that renting that unit now at 20% below the downstairs neighbor's rent would cause a serious problem for her, and that rushing to get this rented right now would cause a problem. And so, you know, we're going to work with our leasing agent to try to be to encourage people as much as possible to respond to the ads, come out and see the units and work with us, and you know, make an offer, and let's get something done. You know, the rental market with rent control is different from the sale market fundamentally, because we can't, you know, reduce the price and then hope for overbids. It doesn't work that way. And, you know, setting a precedent with one unit in the same building causes problems with others. And so, you know, it becomes a domino effect. And so we really want to be careful and methodical and patient as we go through this. And it's hard to be patient because there's money that's being lost. But I would rather be losing money on a vacant unit for a somewhat longer period of time than lose money on an occupied unit and get a very low rent forever. And so, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, understanding that the fundamentals of San Francisco are that, you know, employment is good and housing is scarce. And if you own it, you have to be careful with it. And I'm just hoping that when the economy starts to come back, because people are able to be healthy, that, you know, people will still want to live here, even if they do have the option to work from home I'm not sure everybody's going to want to work from home forever. They might do that 2 or 3 days a week, and that still makes things easy if you don't have to drive to work or get on public transit to go to work. You just get up and put on your sweatpants like you do now. But I don't necessarily, I hope working from home is not the long-term solution, and certainly not from, parts far flung, because I don't know if that is necessarily going to be able to yield the same results for the businesses as they've had in the past. So,
yeah, interesting point on that. Facebook offered that they said their employees could work from wherever they want, but they would be paid a salary based on wherever they relocate to.
Oh, really?
So that's an interesting idea. They're like, yeah, you can move and you can work remotely. We're not paying you San Francisco money.
Right.
So that's an interesting thing as well. Stitch just laid off a bunch of employees as well, but they said they kind of did the same thing. They said you can relocate. We're just not going to. We're reducing our footprint in San Francisco. You can relocate. We'll pay you. This is it's an online based business, but they're going to be paid obviously less. So there's a bit of a out migration from San Francisco as a result of some of this stuff. A friend of mine in the assessor's office in San Francisco said the government is telling everybody they can expect to work from home for 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
At the government offices. And so that's a long time, right? So anybody who was thinking about moving into the city, they're going to be working from home. Why pay that rent? You're working from home. I mean, yeah, obviously there's, it's a great place to live and it's fun, but your job's not there.
Well, and all the fun stuff's not happening either. So why bother?
Right. I mean, until September, October, I guess.
Yeah.
Until some of the more of the fun stuff comes back. But she was saying, I was like, ideally, do you want to work from home? She said, ideally, I'd like to work 3 days a week from home and 2 in the office. And I said,
right.
So there's still going to be a connection to office work. It's not going to go away forever. It just doesn't make sense. But it's going to make renting on the residential side, because you're going to see that outflow from San Francisco for a while, and then eventually everyone come back because they want to be together. And it's a great place to be. But
and I think the part of the market segment that may have the biggest challenge in the long run is the people who are trying to rent substandard units at reasonable but probably overpriced rents. It's going to be the better quality units should even if they have a rent decrease, have a lowering of their rate. Those units should very well maintain some semblance of value, but the owners who have underinvested in their properties and haven't done necessary upgrades and don't provide a competitive product are going to have a hard time competing in the market. The volume of units that can realistically expect to get a decent rent is going to start to get squished. And so, there will be people who have a harder time than they used to and have to get, realistic about reinvesting in their property or selling it to somebody who will invest properly. Because if you've owned a building for, 20 or 30 years and you've just kept turning it over with paint and carpet, and you haven't done the kitchen and you haven't done electrical upgrades and you haven't replaced the windows and you haven't done those sorts of upgrades to make the unit more modern and more suitable for the needs of people, especially those who are working from home. If you don't have good electrical system in your building and, the tenant's got to use a dozen surge protectors just to get their computer setup put together, that's a problem. And tenants are going to, lose their patience with those little 2-prong to 3-prong connectors and stuff. Those are a pain in the butt, and they're a fire hazard too. So
I agree with that. I mean, what you're talking about is it turning into a renter's market and a buyer's market on the sales side. So on the sales side, same kind of thing. I mean, there was a period of time in San Francisco, you didn't have to put a sign up on the lawn. You throw it online, and it doesn't matter what condition it's in. You get multiple offers, right? And that market's probably gone for a while. You have to be more competitive. and you're going to have to be much more kind of price conscious, and quality is, you know, they're just more discriminating. Buyers can be more discriminating. You know, it's just the way it is. And so same on both ends, and the investment side for that matter. I mean, that would be more reflected in a higher cap rate. And so investors are like, yeah, I'll buy it, but I need a greater return. You know?
Lower price.
Yeah, they'll just have more power. Buyers will have more power, and renters will have more power. Same kind of idea. So it doesn't mean, yeah, let's compete. Let's do that. I mean, that's fine. I'm not opposed to that. You don't throw in the towel, but it's, you know, gone are the days when you could kind of do minimal.
Right. And, you know, the important thing about that future prediction is that now's the time. If you have a vacant unit and you've not invested as much in things like electrical upgrades, things like, you know, windows and kitchens and bathrooms and the things that tenants want, or even common area upgrades, making your lobbies and hallways and stuff more attractive, now's probably the time to invest if you have the money. I mean, that's the rub, isn't it? I mean, if you've lost your job or your house, you know, you're not able to get a line of credit against your house in order to invest in the apartment building for the long run, you know, because your job has reduced in income or you're retired or whatever it is, and you can't access the capital to make the necessary investments that you maybe haven't had to make in the past. You know, it becomes difficult, but we can talk about, you know, how to make those things happen. The contractors are, you know, for the most part available. A lot of the demand for these sorts of projects seems to have dried up a little bit in the last few months. And so we're getting pretty reasonable responses from contractors in terms of timing and pricing, because there are a lot of people who put off elective work. But now's the time to do that work. So let us know if you have questions about that kind of stuff. We could certainly make recommendations on those projects. We'll be happy to let you know. I mean, I think in a lot of circumstances, we've already made those recommendations. You know, I know they're expensive. I know they're painful, but now's the time to start considering them. So yeah, that's what's going on. Bert, what's up? Hold on. There you
go. Before we get too far into Chicken Little, a lot of the people who are in this city don't want to own a car because a car costs well over $1,000 and regularly gets broken into and has all sorts of other things. And they just enjoy having the range of things that you can do in the city, what you can buy, what you can take care of. You know, there's a huge attraction still to the city. And if you're moving out to the outer areas, in most cases, you have to have a car. It's going to cost you more, and you lay that again. So there's still an appeal to the city. I'm not saying there isn't going to be an adjustment, but for by the way, all the bike shops are out of bikes.
Right.
There's no more stock in it because everybody wants to just be able to walk and ride their transportation. So I think there's an opposite effect going on. And as people get more serious about climate change and things like that, being within a close range, even if you don't have to go in every day, gives you a lot more access. It also, a lot of the jobs, high-tech jobs, live by meeting other people and talking shop. And it can be random meetings in a bar. It can be anywhere, but they really enjoy getting together and just talking and sharing ideas and stuff like that. It's not an organized thing. It's not something you can pull together in Zoom very easily. So there are some positive aspects that suggest that maybe for a while, but I'm fairly confident that it will settle in.
Right. I think in the long run, density is still the way to go for the environment and for lifestyle. But right now it's difficult. And you're right. I think that a lot of the companies, there's a reason why they have that open office floor plan and they have all those, you know, silly, you know, or amenities that we might think of as silly because we don't have them, like, you know, beer kegs in the common area and all that free food. It's just to get people to, you know, sit down and have a conversation, have that chance encounter that results in a brilliant idea, you know, technological idea at, you know, 3 o'clock in the afternoon when somebody's burned out on a different project. All of a sudden they start thinking of something else. And so, you know, I still think, I agree, there's plenty of good positive things, and we just have to get through this tough time. And if that means, we leave units empty for longer than we'd like to, we do more selling to try to get people to come out and take a look at units and make a better deal with people, without having to reduce the price by 20% right on the market, in an open way. We're happy to work with the right people. I don't necessarily want 20 people banging down the door to rent an apartment because it's underpriced. It doesn't work that way in this business, quite the same way as it does in sales. You don't want a bidding war for an apartment, because people don't bid on rent. They bid on, I want to buy it and I want to take it down. And it's a one-time purchase, not a recurring expense. So
I thought it was interesting, in that article that you referenced that we both read, they were talking about the new construction that was coming out. The incentives to attract renters were moving from one month free rent to 2 months free rent.
Right.
I was like, whoa, I've never seen that. I've never seen 2 months offered. Reference in the article, I haven't seen it live happening, but that's, new construction guys, they have to get money flowing. They have debts to pay, right? So,
right.
But that's a big discount.
Yeah, they've got a time horizon. Discount. Yeah. They've got money to pay back quickly. Yeah.
They need to get money on the books and get refied out of those deals. But I agree with everything Bert said. I think this is temporary. It's just the big question is how long? How long are we going to kind of be, in this? Is the big question. But I do think it goes back to, I do think people come back to the city and want to work around each other and want to live close to each other, and pack their restaurants and bars and have a great time, for sure.
Yeah, I would actually like to see our emphasis doing something about homeless. That's the biggest negative that we've got on our streets these days. Yeah,
that's a huge problem. In the East Bay too. Oakland, I live in Berkeley. Oakland and Berkeley are dealing with the same thing, and it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. I wonder where that lawsuit goes with Hastings Law, the guys who put together that suit. That'll be interesting to see where that goes. But if they make any progress. The problem is Gavin he was working with a huge surplus, is moved a huge deficit, and he was going to invest a lot in statewide efforts to address homelessness, and that money's gone. So we'll get out of it. It's California. We'll be fine.
Dad, did you have a comment?
Well, a couple. First, the question about if they do away with Costa-Hawkins, what's your situation? You're just going to get the lowest rent that you have had per the establishment of the law. So if you don't get the maximum rent now, you're stuck.
Right. You're talking about Prop 10.
Yes, Prop 10.
Enact vacancy control. You'll get a maximum of 15% rent increase over the course of 3 years, going back to when the tenant moved in. So even if you rent a unit hastily now for 20% lower, you may be stuck with that rent forever. With a maximum of 15% rent increase across time. And it's still important to make sure you get your top dollar every time you have a vacancy. And once again, sort of value that vacancy as value the vacant unit as an opportunity rather than the lowered rent. If it takes you a little longer to get it, it's worth getting the highest possible number. You're not sure, when you're going to be able to get that market rate again.
Well, just to share.
Yep, absolutely.
JJ convinced me after 30 years to put in a washer and dryer in an empty unit. And we'll see. We can use that as a test and see how we do with the market.
Yeah.
It'd be tough.
It helps.
That's
the way to address the discount, I think, is in the free month. I mean, it's you just, with these tightly controlled rent control markets and Prop 10 and all of that, you just don't want to drop your rent. But if you want to take your discount, just take it on the front end. If you're willing to do that, I mean, would be my recommendation.
We have tenants who are coming to us with enormous rent decrease requests, like 30 or 40%,
Wow.
based on comps that aren't really comps. That, you know, oh, there's a 2-bedroom unit over here. Yeah, but yours is a 3-bedroom unit and it's twice the size, and you have better amenities and blah 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 blah. And they don't want to hear it. And even 1 month in some circumstances just isn't enough. They're still not interested in talking about that. And that's a situation where, you know, sometimes if we have someone who's not interested in negotiating, we may have to just let them go. Or someone who's stuck on a position that seems, you know, too far away. You know, a tenant approached us recently for it was like a 1/3 rent reduction on a $4,500 rent. Didn't make any sense. It wasn't market rate at all. So, you know,
I didn't know you were talking about existing tenants.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about like trying to lease a unit.
That too.
Yeah.
And if you can give a month's free rent, that's worth, you know, advertising and talking about.
So
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to, where do you get your comps from?
Craigslist. I mean, that's the best source. You can pull up a map and look at the dots on the map. But the problem is, a lot of times tenants, when they're looking at comps, are misinterpreting what's in the comps, and they fail to understand what's truly, you know, the benefits that they have and how it compares to the units that they're finding. And so we have to educate them and, you know, have a real dialogue. But, you know, the key is not getting upset about it, because it's just a conversation about business. We have to really make sure that everybody understands. And so that's why we're there to help our clients, to make sure that they understand, you know, what the business imperatives are, and how important it is to keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I had a tenant recently, and she was kind of pained by getting a rent reduction every month. And I said, well, what do you need? Like, what do you think you need in total? Because every month is kind of painful for you. So what do you need in total? And she said, she thought about it for a day and came back to me. She said, 5 months, 50% off. And I said, okay, you're talking about deferral or discount? And she said, well, let's talk about it. And I said, okay. So I went back with my friend who I own the building with, and we said, let's do 50% discount and 50% deferral. And so, you know, there's an endpoint for me. So for my budgeting, I like that in a sense. I'm giving up half of it. I've always, since day one, I've always assumed I'm going to take a big gut punch here. There's no way I'm getting out of this alive.
Well, not whole.
So,
you won't get out of it whole, but I hope you get out of it alive.
Yeah. Okay. That's better.
Or if you're talking about it on the whole scale of life, you're not getting out of it alive, but this won't kill you.
Correct. So anyway, I just put that out there. Just like, there's just so many different ways to kind of address this, and back to kind of Denise's point, it's just case by case. But for me personally, it's like I you know, it's knowing that there's kind of an end date out there, at least based on what she thinks she can do based on her business, which is, you never know. But you know, these kind of like open-ended, I'm gonna pay you 50% for I don't know, could be a year, could be a year and a half. It's like, whoa, can we make a deal?
Yeah,
so,
I'm not looking at anything. I've had people approach me for deals longer than the end of this year, and I'm not entertaining any conversation of beyond 2020, because I feel like we're in the beginning of this. Everything changed quickly, and I think there could come a point, I'm hoping that there's a point, where everything changes again, and maybe it changes for the better and things start to recover. And, you know, we the farthest I can really think about this is, you know, the next couple of months. Jeff Gutstadt, go ahead. You have a comment? Jeff, are you there? Hang on. There you are. Jeff, I can't hear you. Hold on. There you are. Oh, There you are. I'm unmuting you. Just a minute.
He's still muted.
I see that. Hold on. There it
How's
is.
that? Can
There
you hear
you
me
are.
now?
Yes, I can hear you now. How are you?
This is Wayne April, actually,
Oh,
just
Wayne.
in the background.
Oh, hi there.
I had a question. I know you're talking about deal making and so forth and so on. At what point does the landlord get brought in with that?
Oh, immediately. If a tenant, if a tenant comes to me and says, I want to make a deal, the client gets told right away. I'm not making deals without talking to the client about what it is that we're talking about. In your specific situation, I haven't heard anything that I'm aware of about your specific tenants. They've been there for a long time. I don't think they're going to call us for anything right now. And if they do, we may very well be pleased to hear that they have somewhere else to go.
You mean they've been there too long?
It's getting to be that point for at least, definitely for one, probably for the other.
No. Yeah, I was getting a little nervous. I was talking to a woman friend today, and she has a 2-unit building that she rents out. And she said she had to strike a deal with one of her tenants on reducing the rent.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have a property manager. She just does it herself. So I'm hoping that's not going to happen. But, I mean, we're not going to die if we lose a tenant.
No.
So it's...
No, I think your most recent tenant has been there for 15 plus years. So it's been a long time. I remember renting that unit very early on in my career, and that was the end of it. And so, but we also keep in mind how grateful we are that we've had the same tenant for a very long time, even though the rent has stayed fixed at a lower level than what you might otherwise have gotten. There have been fewer expenses. There's been no vacancy loss, and it's been a pretty reliable tenant. So there's value in that, and we really do value even the tenants with the below market rents, because they as long as they're good tenants and they pay on time and they don't give us any trouble, it's good to have somebody who's reliable.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Rent control.
Well. Anyway, if you know anybody who is actively interested in buying right now, I don't know a whole lot of them, but if you do, we're interested in working with good buyers who are able to make a well-capitalized deal. Let us know if you have any other property management related questions, any sales questions. Josh and I are here for you, and John's also here, and the rest of the staff as well. So it's great seeing you. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, concerns before we sign off for the day?
No, I just wanted to say hello to Joel. He's the one who I signed our contract with.
That's right. All those years ago. There he is. Anyway, nice to
see you.
Nice to see you, everybody. Thank you for all of your participation and for joining us for these calls. And we will see you again shortly. On Friday, we'll have Denise to give us the legal update if there is anything much going on legally that we need to talk about. And we'll hope that we get some relief in terms of some medical advances soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good seeing everybody.